Okay, so as we've sort of said before on meetings we've had, stop us, ask questions at any stage. This isn't a presentation where we're delivering lots of content or whatever. It's an open discussion, and essentially I've called on Kristen to come and support me, so you're not just listening to my voice like it was last time, and add a little bit of variety to our content. But introduce Kristen for us, Kristen Sample. We met back in what, 2018?
11 or 12.
Oh, wow. Longer ago. Wow, that's a long time ago. Yeah, 2011, 2012. We were coaching out in Narrabeen at the high school there when Kristen decided to come over to Australia for a little bit, and obviously being a token tourist, decided to live on the northern beaches, as most people do as they come out. And we've kept in contact every now and again. Kristen's probably one of the few females that I've been able to see that have had quite a history in coaching at some different levels as well. So a variety of different experiences for her, not just with top level stuff, but also beginners, which is what we dealt with a lot at the school. People that just didn't want to play rugby or something, decided that they were going to play a sport that they're less likely to get hurt with. So Kristen, you can do a better job introducing yourself than me. Want to let everyone know sort of what your current role is and how you got into coaching?
Yeah, so currently I am the head of academy and women's goalkeeping at Sligo Rovers. Sligo Rovers are, at least on the men's side, a professional club in the northwest of Ireland. On the women's side, we play in the Women's National League, which is the highest level you can play in Ireland. And then I'm also the Irish U16 goalkeeper coach. So I came over here in January, and about 2 weeks after I got over here, I had an email from the Irish U16 coach, who's also the women's senior assistant coach. He was like, "We're looking for another goalkeeper coach, or we're looking for a goalkeeper coach. Would you be interested?" I was like, "Yes, sign me up." So that's where I am now. It's, I don't know, it's wild and exciting, and every day is a bit different, but yeah, it's cool because I get to work with the boys and the girls here, and I get to work with different ages up to the senior level. And for a while there, I was a senior level goalkeeper, but then I broke my arm in 3 places about 2 months ago. So now I don't play.
You've had a little history of injuries, haven't you?
Yeah, actually, when we met, I had done my shoulder and I tore my labrum in my right shoulder. So there's a little anchor keeping it together. And that was really the last injury that I had. I didn't go back to playing. And then I was actually coaching in Portugal in 2020, in September of 2020 down to December. Loved it, was having a great time. Actually, that's not entirely true. I loved living in Portugal. The quality of life was fantastic. I hated the job. I actually hated coaching at that club. I hated the directors. I hated the head coach. And I've never hated any parts of coaching, but that was the one time where I was like, this sucks. This is absolutely awful. So I did what I needed to do to finish my coaching course at that time. And once I made sure that the filming was good enough and sent it on, I sent in this massive resignation letter to the players. I didn't even send it to the director, because it's like, she doesn't speak English anyways, and she's a dick to me, so it doesn't matter. I knew I wasn't going to get a reference anyways, so I just did that. And then some of the players I stayed in contact with them. They're like, "Well, when you stepped into training, you were our best goalkeeper." I was like, if this is what it takes for me to get back to Europe, then sure, I'll just go back to playing. So yeah, so last summer I went back to playing, and well, it ended badly with a broken arm.
Yep, that's one of always the downsides of playing, right? More likely to get an injury, and if you get something that serious, it's almost game over, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a bad one. I mean, it was crazy when I was sitting in the hospital and they're like, "We're kind of surprised that the bone didn't pop out of the skin." But then 2 minutes later, they're like, "Yeah, you don't need surgery." I was like, I'm not going to tell you guys how to do your job, because this is well out of my depth, but I don't think you're doing it right. I eventually did get.
How's it impacted your coaching so far then?
It's made it really difficult for me to serve. I also had just started taking on like individual clients, and there's not a whole lot of goalkeeper coaches in the area. So that was me doing like side projects so I could just get some extra money coming in. And those players would have like no experience and no understanding of the game. So for me to try and demonstrate things for them was really difficult. I had to be very, very descriptive using my words, which is fine. But then you also think like there's the barrier or difference in what words we use in terms we'd use in America versus in Ireland. So it's trying to be conscious of those things as well. So it was really challenging, and even just trying, like, I'd have to put them in position and then kind of adjust things with my left arm and be like, so this is what it's meant to feel like. So now we're going to try it. And then like, so they were diving and they'd be starting on the ground. I'm like, this is what your shape is going to look like as I adjust them. And then I'm trying to tell them how to step and dive into that without being able to show them anything. It's just really, really difficult for like 10-year-olds who've never had that experience. We got there, we made progress, but yeah, it was very challenging. And even still, like, I can't really demonstrate, but at least I can serve better. So that does help a fair bit. There was also, like, I was in a pile of pain for the first 3 weeks. So even just walking up to the pitches was awful. I think one of our coaches, there's only one coach in the club that had no idea that I had broken my arm. And he was like, oh, I thought you were just taking some time off. I was like, no, I can't move. I remember the morning after I'd broken the arm, and I thought that I had set the angle up in my bed just right, that I'd be able to get up, but I actually couldn't. So when I woke up and I couldn't reach my painkillers, I was just laying in bed like, oh my God. Because every time I try and go up, my arm was in screaming pain. And I was like, I'm literally stuck here. And my housemate was asleep for like the next 3 hours. So I was like, I have to go to the bathroom. I can't go anywhere. I'm in pain. I can't reach my painkillers, but I can't do anything. I was just laying there like, this is awful.
Oh no.
Prisoner in my own bed. So yeah, in different ways it's affected me. Just because I haven't been able to move as well, but we're getting there. Somewhat mobile now.
Good to know that you're back on the mend. Otherwise, yeah, that could be an experience for you anyway.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys watch a whole lot of The Simpsons, but there's one episode where I think they're like, oh, so-and-so is pronounced dead on the scene. Oh, it was Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns was pronounced dead on the scene. And then he was taken to a better hospital where his condition was upgraded to alive. That's what it was like with my arm, where it's like, you don't need surgery. Then I was taken to a better hospital and they're like, you need surgery right away.
Always have a second opinion, man.
That's it, yeah. You go to the professionals. Like, I went to a sports clinic and they're like, that's not going to heal on its own. And I've been told that Sligo Hospital is not a great place if you have broken bones, and I can confirm that it is a terrible place if you have broken bones.
So when did you already start coaching?
I kind of had always been doing some form of coaching from the time that I was like 15 or 16. Just they're like, my parents took on very young teams, and then I would coach the goalkeepers, or I'd give them ideas on things that we had been doing in training. But I don't think I really took it on as something that I wanted to be very passionate about and actually do well with until probably right before I moved to Australia. Just because when I was playing in England, we had really good coaches using our facilities. We also had decent enough coaches within our setup at Durham also. So it kind of gave me a different perspective on the game and how you can manage players and manage the situation. It gave me a little bit more control over what I was doing as a player also. And I remember thinking like, ooh, this is like, they're giving me this authority so I can kind of make more decisions. This is great. This would be a good way for me to learn more about the game. So when I came into Australia, I was able to kind of apply a lot of those lessons that I learned and still keep growing and learning. There's one coach that I worked with. Obviously, Dan, you were great, and I learned piles from those guys. But there's also John Crawley, who is an outstanding goalkeeper coach. Is he the under-21s Australian coach?
No, men's team, national team.
There you go. So he was excellent, and I got to work with him, and I learned so much from him. And him and the goalkeeper coach that I had worked with in England were very similar, and it kind of created this environment of like you do what's best for you, but here are different tools to figure out what works. So at least from the goalkeeping coach perspective, that changed how I had done a lot of things. Because in America, it's like, do this. And if you don't do it this way, you're dead wrong, which is an awful way of being. But between those two coaches, it really changed how I coached. And then I came back to America and I started coaching goalkeepers more frequently and was coaching at a reasonably high level there and was doing a bunch of my coaching badges. In 2016, I did my UEFA B. And when I signed up for it, I was like, what do I really want to be doing with this? Because this is a lot of money to be spending to just be coaching goalkeepers and to be hitting volleys at kids. So what do you want to do with this license? It was like my come to Jesus moment, if you will, where I was like, all right, I think I want to be coaching in the underage setups in Ireland. This is a true story. I want to be working in coach education in Ireland, and I want to work in the development of goalkeeping in Ireland. So 2 of the 3 I'm already doing. And I kind of set my time limit to like do this by the time I'm 40. So I've got 2 of the 3 and I'm not working in coach education. And I'll be honest, I'm spread too thin as it is anyways. So I wouldn't be able to, even if I wanted to do it. But it was just like, I had to kind of make those commitments and be like, these are the things that I want to contribute to, because I don't just want to be working and doing the same thing without having something that I'm working towards at the end of the day. Then what's the goal and how do I achieve it? And I had to start focusing more on what I was bringing to the table as a coach. And it's been good so far, but it's sometimes, like right now with all the teams that I'm working with, it is challenging to stay focused on what each team needs. So yeah.
Yes, that's probably a different challenge to what the people on this call will have to deal with, because you cover so many teams and so many different players, and then you've got, obviously, with goalkeepers, they could be in the same squad but playing in different teams potentially, be it first team, reserve team, and then you've obviously got with national teams as well, they're playing at their clubs as well. So there's a lot that goes into it than just turn up and throwing and catching a few balls, right?
Yeah, it's a mad one, because we've got a new crop of under 16 players for the national team, and the goalkeepers that I stepped into last year, lights out. I don't know if you guys have seen this in Australia, but I definitely saw it in America, where like certain birth years are really strong and then other birth years would be a bit weaker. So the birth year that we're working with right now wouldn't be anywhere near as strong as the birth year that we had last year. Mm-hmm. And the goalkeepers were just incredible. Like the third goalkeeper is one that I have in our club. And if she were a U16 this year, she would be head and shoulders above the goalkeepers that we have now, but she's not. So in her age group, she's good, but she's not as good as the other 2. So it's challenging. And then when I look at the goalkeepers that we have there for the Irish squad, and you want to give them information and you want to work with their coaches and say like, look, you have a great potential in this goalkeeper, but they need to get better at ABC and XYZ. And then their coaches are like, yeah, but that's not something that we want to work on. Or worse yet, a lot of their coaches don't know how to work on it. They're just like, no, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I'm going to coach. And I find that so frequently in women's football, especially in developing goalkeepers. So it's a weird thing here, because as one coach was saying to me yesterday, it's like the coaches feel like the player is their player to own, as opposed to like, I'm going to develop this player because when they progress into the national squad or they progress into a first team squad, it's a good reflection of me. No, they have like a death grip on these players, and it is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
I'd say that I still see that a little bit here, in terms of a lot of my players, our players, the club's players. Well, particularly at grassroots level, they're there just because they want to be there, and there's nothing other than that $400 they pay to go and play for the next club next year. And you want to move up the player pathway. The club can't often go as fast as the player. The player can fast track each year up a different stepping stone or into a new program. The club will take years and years to be able to. Australian case might never get there because they can't achieve the professional status anyway. So it's trying to put your own ego aside sometimes, right? And just do the best for the individual. Like if people got into coaching just for themselves, it just does my head in. Like you can impact so many young players. And for me, I was like, I want to impact women's football in Ireland. So if I can develop those goalkeepers to get to that level, that's great.
realistically, I probably think I'm a better goalkeeper coach than some of the other coaches out there. But at the same time, if all I'm doing is just trying to progress them onto that next level, they're going to have to go to another goalkeeper coach, and that's fine. So that's my job, is to just keep progressing them. And it'd be great if they could stay with me. I would love that. But if I am able to keep developing these players so they move on, that's a great reflection of me as well. So,
well, you build a reputation of done really well. So that's when I want to go to that next person. That's how schools survive, right? With all their end of year results.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's ironic because there are so many teachers that work in football.
Yeah. So how are you in terms of, in your current roles, female to male ratio of coaches?
I'd say I'm the only female coach in the club with like a high level role. Like, we'd have a couple of female assistant coach, but in terms of being like a director and, head of goalkeeping, I would be the only woman there. And then I want to say there are two. So one of our players on the senior team, she's the assistant coach for the under 17s, but the under 17s play on the same day that we play, and they train on the same days that we train. So she was at the match this past Saturday just because it happened to be at the same place as our match, but she wouldn't normally be able to make a whole lot. So even though she is an assistant coach, she hasn't been at almost anything through no fault of her own. It's just, she's a senior player and she can't make all those things. And it's a shame too, because she's probably the best female player that Sligo Rovers, or that the county of Sligo have ever produced, rather. She's been capped for the senior women's team. She scored the first goal in the showgrounds, an unbelievable free kick in the dying minutes against Bohemians, just into the top corner. So incredible player, and it's just a shame that she can't influence more of the girls, because she'd be a great role model for them as well. And then they also have another female coach who's an assistant coach. I wouldn't know her that well because I don't get to go to many of their training sessions. And I did just remember our under 19s team have a female assistant coach also, who's actually very good too. And she was an underage international as well, but I don't think she's played in a long while now. So it's not a whole lot. On the boys' side, I'd be the only female coach. Men's side, have no females on staff, not even physios. And for the Irish under 16 squad, there's me and Megan Smith-Lynch. We're the two female coaches on staff. Megan would be the first assistant, and I'd be the goalkeeper coach. So, yeah.
How do you find it working with so many males?
I think it's just something that I've been used to, so it's not something that I find challenging at all. I would say when it comes to at least coaching, that when I coach males versus females, like, males are normally going to question why you're doing something. And it's not because they want to question your authority. It's more that they just want to understand, like, yeah, but why would I do that? And for me, it's been great as a coach, because I've never looked at it as being threatened or feeling like they don't want to do what I'm telling them to do. They're just like, I don't get it. And then I have to explain it. And I have to have a good reason for what I'm doing, which honestly, as a coach, you probably should have that as well. Like, you should be able to back it up. Because if you don't have a reason for why you're doing it, then why are you doing it? And maybe the players bring in a different perspective that you didn't think of. So it's good to kind of give them a platform to talk as well. Whereas on the girls' side, generally speaking, I've seen that most girls are just going to do what they're told. And I'm like, but ask the questions, like, understand why you're doing it. And this isn't for everyone, but I have found that a lot of the times they are like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And they don't even know how to do it or why they're doing it. So the whole why goes out of the picture, and the why is the big reason that you would do something. So then they're not just doing the same thing on repeat, but they have a reason for why they're doing it. Oh, because this player's come here, this pass should be on instead, and we need to make this run. But if that player doesn't go there, then we don't have to play that ball just because it's gone into our wide player, So it's I've especially seen it with coaches, because they're like, oh, I really like coaching girls because they listen. And I'm like, they're obedient, yes, but also, like, make sure that they understand what you're asking them to do. So, well, that's been
the why leads to the decision, doesn't it? So why to do A or B, and if they understand the why, then they're going to make better decisions on the field rather than just what's that saying about teach a man to fish and live for however long versus just how to eat it.
That's
right?
it. That's exactly it. Yeah. So, yeah, and in terms of the coaching side, I guess I've been really lucky here. I feel lucky to be at the club, and the club have said multiple times that they feel lucky to have me. So anytime I have an idea, they're always happy to hear it. Like, I'd say when I first came in, I was probably blowing up my manager's phone all the time with different ideas. And he was like, what is wrong with this girl? Send her back to America. But no, we found our balance now. So whenever I see something, especially on huddle clips, like, I can just send them over to him and be like, so what do you think about this, that, and the other? And he's always very receptive to it. And I think he's kind of learned that with me, he can also say, it is a good idea. It's not a priority idea. And these are the priorities. And I'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, he doesn't have to just shut me down. He also doesn't have to just cater to me. So I know with our 15s boys, they'd be the team that I probably spend the most amount of time with in terms of our academy side. And their coaches are always asking me if I have feedback. But to be honest, they're so much nicer to the boys than I would be. Like, every game that I've been at, they have just been absolute stinkers. And I'm like, we probably need to tear into them because they look like they're still on the bus. And the head coaches are just so nice. And they're like, do you have anything to say? I'm like, nope. It's not the day for me to make somebody cry.
I have a lot of things to say, but I will bite my tongue.
Yeah, that's it.
Have you ever felt being a female has been a challenge for you in terms of coaching because it is so male dominated?
Yes. Yeah, I'd say, you know how, I don't know if you know about this, but like in the UK, there are more jobs now or job applications where they don't want you to disclose if you're female. They don't actually want like your personal name. Like, they just kind of want this information and your email, and then they'll, like, looking at that blank slate, then they'll make the decision if they want to call you in for an interview or not. So since that has started happening, I can't tell you the amount of interviews that I had, the amount of times that I got called in to go over for an interview. Previously, when it was me sending my CV, which had like pictures of me coaching or had my name on it, whatever, that I wasn't getting anything. And then I was seeing the people who were getting the jobs. I was like, but I'm actually like substantially more qualified than that person is. So yeah, I do actually think that being a female has hurt me from getting jobs in the past. I also feel I'm reasonably bold because I feel like you don't ask, don't get. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen? If I ask for it, they say, oh no, you can't have this. So I coached in the US Soccer Development Academy in the States. I was the first female coach to coach on the boys' side there. And basically when their goalkeeper coach was leaving, and I was already coaching most of the goalkeepers anyways, but when their goalkeeper coach was leaving, I was talking to our head of academy and I said, oh, where's Mike going? He's like, oh, he's heading over to Salt Lake City, just moving out there with his girlfriend. I was like, oh, great for him. Who's taking over the goalkeepers? And he was like, I don't know. I said, why don't you just make it me? And he said, it's actually a good idea. So, but like, if I hadn't said that, I don't think he would have naturally came to that conclusion. But I know men who would do that. And I just don't think that that's something that would often happen for women, that they'd be bold enough to be like, yeah, but why shouldn't I have this job? So because I stepped up to it, they're like, yeah, actually, that's a good idea. And then I did get the job. Like a week later, they're like, yeah, we don't need to interview you because you already coach our goalkeepers. How's this sound for the pay package? It's like, great, happy with that. So, and in fairness, I loved that job. Like I say it all the time. I left America because I don't love America. Sure, look at all the gun crime. It's a crazy place to be. But I loved my work. I loved the goalkeepers that I coached there. I loved the club that I worked with. So that was hard saying goodbye to. But yeah, it was good to be able to get out in the end anyways, and especially to get here where I love it. But yeah, I think you don't ask, don't get, because the worst thing that would have happened is they would have said, I know we have somebody else in mind, or we want this person instead. Okay, cool. Still going to coach your goalkeepers anyways because they pay me to do that.
Interesting. Surprising that it wouldn't almost be their automatic thought if they're that quick to say, yeah, sure, actually, you're really good. Let's keep on going. And obviously, having seen your coach, and I know that you're more than capable, you go, should have been able to come to that conclusion themselves.
Yeah, and it's entirely possible that they were just had a lot going on as well and weren't thinking about it. But it was just, yeah, I can see who they probably would have gone with if I hadn't said it. And I really like the other guy, and I think he's great as well. But he's also a kid. Like, he's 8 years younger than me, isn't anywhere near as experienced as I am on the coaching side. He knows the college game, which is a very different game than elite club. Like, we lose players in the academy structure that would have otherwise been into youth national systems because they go to college, and then they won't stick it out in the youth national structure because our college coaches are, generally speaking, so poor in America.
It's a shame because college sport in general is huge, right?
Yeah, it's a real headache. Like, the best thing that I can say about it is to coach at the academy level in the States, you have to minimally have your B license. To coach at the college level, you have to have a college degree. It doesn't matter what coaching license you have. I mean, some schools will be like, yes, you need this coaching license, but there are a crap ton of college programs where you don't need much of anything. So
that's interesting, because we've had a few players that have recently gone from over here to America to be part of the college system over there. That said it's love life. But they've also gone to Los Angeles and things like that. Go live in California and be the tourist over there.
Yeah, but you can go for your quality of life, and you can also say like they might not have a future in football, and that's okay because they could still just get to play football and get their education covered anyways. But for some of the players that would definitely have a future in football, sometimes for them going the college route is just a death wish on their aspirations.
So we've spoken quite a bit around top level teams, obviously we're national teams and stuff at the moment. What about your experiences with sort of the beginners? How have you found that when you have coached lower abilities or first timers, and you've obviously got higher qualifications, high level experience, high standards, and you're sort of coming with the beginners? How have you found that as a challenge as yourself?
It's a very different challenge because I'd be used to seeing progress happen much quicker. And then it's like, right, you have to just kind of take your little victories. And then it's also trying to get used to the different timelines. So like what you'd have with beginners and how long it takes them to figure out something versus what it might take a senior player. Or even just a more experienced player. It can be really challenging because you don't want to use that beginner's timeline and apply it to the senior's timeline when you go between the two. I guess the best things that I've kind of said to myself are that you don't know what you don't know, and you only know what you know. So if a player doesn't know, you have to give them that information and give them the tools so that they can understand as best as possible, and then keep reinforcing that understanding as well. Oh crap, I forgot what the second one was. If there's a way to do something better, then always do it better. So like when I came in here to Sligo, even I was in the women's national league last year down in Cork City, and our coach was kind of saying like he didn't know how good our standard was compared to other women's national league teams, but he had coached the men's team previously. And I said, well, is this good enough for Ballina Mallard, which was the men's team? He's like, no. I'm like, then it's not good enough here. If the standard can be better, make it be better. Now, the flip side, also when you have grassroots players is of course making sure that they have fun and that they're enjoying it. And it's true for senior players too, but I think your kind of fun and work balance are a little bit different as you get into the more senior levels anyways. But it's still, if it can be better, then make it better. And I found when I've had younger teams as well, and when they haven't known a whole lot, yeah, they want to be praised and they want to have fun, but they also don't want to be bullshitted. Like they want to be praised because they are doing something well, not just because oh, it's a day that ends in Y, and it feels good to get a little pat on the back. Like they want to know that they've done something well, and they want to kind of take that home and be proud of it. So it's okay to demand more and then tell them, hey, I'm proud of you for stepping up to the plate.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, it is. After some, you might be able to fake it for a little bit, but most of them start to realize, probably didn't deserve that praise, or then you're just sort of set in their way that they can do it at that standard, and that is good enough. Whereas when they then play against a tough team, they're losing and they're crying because they've always been told how good they are, and now they're not so good.
Yeah. I remember when I took over my older girls team in the States. So they were U17 when I left, and they were U14 when I first came in. And I had them doing all this possession stuff, and they were brilliant. I was like, oh my God, look at them. They're so good. And like my dad was one of my assistant coaches, and we were like, how did nobody want to coach this team? Well, then we went against proper opposition. I was like, why are we so bad? And I was like, oh, because we're terrible at defending. Like we're actually really bad at defending. So not only are we bad at defending in games, but we're also bad at defending ourselves in practice. So we think we're really good at possession. But as it turns out, we just suck at defending. So the players just look really good because they're going against basically moving cones. So it was all this, like, we were telling them how good they were in possession, and we're like, how are they so bad here? Oh yeah, because they're just defending against cones. It's not great. Like, or sorry, they're attacking against cones. So
that's that's something I actually mentioned on my coaching courses a lot, about realism, making sure that practice looks real, feels real, and is done as close to the game as possible. I actually did an assessment today on someone, and it was about pressing, but his back four were defending across the entire half of the field. Like literally the right back and the left back were marking their wingers, and they were like meters from the sideline, and the two centre backs were in the middle of the field against the striker. And I was like, yeah, like they pressed okay because they only had to press as individuals against an individual. There was no collective team pressing. And when they won the ball, they could attack because there was like 30 meters between the back four. Right. Yeah, that's not quite good enough because you can't do that on the weekend.
Not sustainable, no.
You can get away with that every now and again, but you've got to make it look real and feel real. And the same with training. If you're just standing around the whole time, they aren't going to enjoy it because that's not what they're there to do. They're there to play a game.
Yeah, that's it.
What was your experiences of coaching when you were in Sydney? Although that wasn't the longest stint, was it? That was probably only a year or so you were here, wasn't it?
It was 8 months that I was there. It was actually, like, it was really good. Like, I consider Australia one of the turning points in my career that kind of like had me focus on coaching. And then obviously when I got into the B license, that was me really having to buckle down on it. But no, it was good because obviously I was with you at Narrabeen High School. But it was good because I had a team that I was reasonably responsible for. Like, I had the reserves, I think, didn't I? Or something.
Man United, you started playing, I think, and then you did your shoulder again or something, and then
so I was I was the head of women's goalkeeping at Manly United, and I was an assistant coach there, which was great. I really enjoyed that also. I was with John with Elite Goalkeeping. I think Seaforth were bringing me in to do goalkeeping as well, but also again difficult because my arm always felt like it was on fire. Then I had little kickers, so great for the bank. But that was, I think that was really it. That was mostly what I did. But like it was a really good experience. I enjoyed all the work that I did there. I felt well supported, like not just from you, but from John as well, and from everybody. Like even at Manly, I felt well supported there. So it's a good environment. It just, Australia felt very far from home.
Feels far from everywhere. Even in Sydney, you feel far from everywhere in Sydney at times.
Yeah, it's just it's always been in the back of my mind of like, if there's an emergency that happened and I needed to get home, would I be able to afford it? And everywhere I've been, the answer's been yes. But when I was in Sydney, I was like, that would like scar me financially. So that's that was a big deciding factor for us in the end to leave. So, but yeah.
Good that you enjoyed it. You felt good about it from that
Definitely,
side.
yeah, I love the coaching side. Because I learned a pile. I learned from you. I learned from John. And like I'd still follow Manly on social media. So still talk to some of the girls that I played with and coached at Manly. Still use some of the drills that I learned from there also. So yeah, I really did enjoy it. And I think like I'd still speak to some of my friends who are into coaching and are looking at playing. I'm like, should check out Australia. Like there's good foundations there. There's good structures there. One of the girls that I played with in England, she's in Australia still and is playing and coaching down there. So, or maybe just playing, but yes, she stayed down there and she moved out there the same year that I did. So, yeah.
Not a bad place to live. Well, preferable when it's not so wet.
Yeah,
that's about to come back around again.
I'm also terrified of snakes, so that was always a lingering fear.
You wouldn't have seen any out on the beaches. You'd have been all right, but just would have been scared in the back of your mind more than anything.
That's it, yeah.
What's your recommendation and your thoughts then for any young females that are considering sort of coaching, be it as a hobby or something a little bit more serious?
Yeah, just go for it, because kind of like I said, don't ask, don't get, but like also if you get into it and you find that you don't love it, that's okay. Like you can always step away from it, but if you find that you do like it, or maybe you like it in different levels, and keep working to stay in those levels, try and keep making yourself relevant. Like if you're into coaching because you want to give back to the game, then you have to keep progressing with the game. If you're into coaching because you enjoy the challenge, which is one of the things that I love. Like I love that buzz on a game day of like, how do I solve this problem? Then again, you're always looking at the pitch and finding the problems and looking for the solutions on it too. And it can be really exciting, but also put your own spin on things. So don't just look at the drills that you're finding online and be like, oh, this looks like something that'll be enjoyable to put out for my team. It's kind of like what we say to the players, like be able to answer the why. It's the same thing when you're coaching. Like you can take ideas from it and put your own spin on it and know why you're doing it. So if the players know why they're doing it, and if you can develop good players that are going to put on the jersey for Australia in the future and then play in the World Cup or play in the Euros, or well, obviously not in the Euros for Australia, but World Cup or play internationally at some stage, that's brilliant. That's a great feather in your cap. And sometimes their journey starts with you, sometimes it ends with you. But unless you really give it a proper go, you're not going to know.
Conscious of time, you're going to have to get going soon, so you're not late. I guess questions from any of our viewers that have got anything to say. Emma, you're normally not too short of a word or two.
No, I love listening to you. And any sort of coaching I can just sit and listen to. It's great, learning a lot. But I do actually have to run off because I am doing coaching at 6. So good timing. I'm actually just about to run off, but I appreciate your time today. And Dan, thanks for putting this all together. I've learned so much just sitting here. I'm going to go ask for things. I'm going to go ask for a lot.
Yeah, and you should do.
Yeah, we'll do. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm actually going to run. So,
Bye,
of course.
Bye, guys.
Jane, have you got a question?
Yeah, I've probably got heaps, but I'll start with. So I just coach a local club side, females, all age, ranging from 16 to 40 something, all various skill levels and I guess reasons for being there. And so, it's a bit in terms of the motivation factor, I've really tried to hone in on that team element, that we play as a team and tied in, what I call the 4 Ps of soccer. So positivity, which is all about communication, positions, so they all know where they're playing on the field and where other people are playing on the field, possession, we spoke about that before, and then possibilities, which is all about, creating options on the field. So it's sort of trying to get a level playing field. but I feel that the goalkeeper misses out most, right? So because it's almost the 11th player on the field that you never use, right? So interested to hear how you, and she's one of the most motivated out there too. So harnessing her energy is really important, but also including her in the game is even more important to me. So how do you sort of integrate that into your training? I've usually played midfield, so I'm not really aware of, goalkeeper tactics per se, but how can I lift the inclusion of the goalkeeper into training and coaching on game day?
It's a really good question. And it's also something we've kind of come up with our new crop of under 16 players, because where last year's group, the goalkeepers were very much one of the 11 or one of the team. This year's group, it feels like there's 10 outfield players and then there's our goalkeeper over there. Yeah. As specific as their individual training can be for them, we also need to keep them involved in the team, and that comes down to them too. So if they're leaving like a 30-40 yard gap between themselves and the back line, then they're not getting themselves involved, but we can encourage them to get a little bit higher also. So I don't know what area of the pitch you're training in, but like if you're doing a full 11 aside, I oftentimes will ask the keeper, like, are you going to get scored on when the ball's over there? And the ball can be with the other team's goalkeeper. Yeah. And they're like, no. I'm like, great, get out of your goal box. Go get a little bit further up. Make sure that your backs can hear you. They should be communicating all the time. So like I know, we don't use fitness to like kind of motivate players, but at the same time, if the ball's in play for 5 seconds and a goalkeeper hasn't said anything, they're probably not as involved as they should be. Yep. So even if the ball can be down on the other side of the pitch and it's still looking at our back line and making sure that we're balanced. So for me, my 2 center backs would have been Orna and Roddy, or Orna and Ruth. And I'd be watching them, I'd say, Orna, make sure you're not going too far over because you've got a player on your right shoulder. So there's not anything that's too crazy. It's like really having to draw away from the game, but it's still keeping her involved and aware of what's happening. It's keeping me involved and aware of what's happening. So communication and distance from the play are big ones. Depending on how effective your goalkeeper is with her feet, she might want to be playing a little bit higher anyway, so she can get onto the ball a bit more. And also, if she's not that great with her feet, then in training, at least, that's a great time for her to be working on her feet as well. So just forcing her to come up a bit higher. I know when I had the team that I had that were 14s, and then when I left, they were 17s, our goalkeeper was terrible with her feet. She had 2 left feet and neither one were good. And that was a big thing that we focused on, was like, I need you to be a resource so that we can build out. And the girl was outstanding after the first year. Like, she'd get the ball, play anywhere that she wanted to. So if you don't ask them to do it, then they're probably not going to do it, because they're going to choose the safe option, which is also something that I find a lot more in women's football compared to men's football. So it's just encouraging that goalkeeper to get a little bit higher and get a little bit more involved. And if you know what motivates her, like, oh, I just want to be very good and I want to prevent a lot of goals from happening, great. Then let's close that gap so that you're not leaving that space between your back line and yourself, and you're giving them that information so you can prevent shots from happening, and you're getting onto the ball, because when you get onto the ball, you might suck the player or suck the opposition in, and then there's going to be space to play in behind, or you get onto the ball just so that it gives our back line a chance to catch their breath, and then we can reset play and attack the way that we'd like to.
Yeah, great. I'm trying to think of another question now.
Luz, do you have any thoughts, anything to add to any questions?
Still on mute.
Yeah, still on mute, Luz.
Oh, sorry. I've got a question. So at school, I've started a club for the school team kind of, and I coach like boys and girls. For the boys, cause like since I'm a girl, it's like harder for them to like listen to me, I guess, because they think that like I'm a girl and I like don't understand anything in soccer. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how can I get them to like kind of listen to me more than just like ignore me and like?
Yeah, I've been blessed that hasn't really happened a whole lot to me, thankfully. Like I've been tested before, but a lot of times I've kind of been able to back it up with information. But I've also had good support as well, where like when I came into the boys academy, the coach that I worked with the most was probably the toughest of the coaches, and the one coach that like people never wanted to cross, because if he was in a bad mood, they found out about it very quickly. So he was the one that really gave me a big backing, and nobody really wanted to go against him, if you will. So if you have somebody who can kind of back you in your school, that's a great start as well. But it's also like catch the players being good, so catch them doing what you want them to do and how it's worked out well. And also, if you can, catch when they've done the opposite of what you've wanted them to do and it's gone the wrong way as well. So like, let's say, you know, you want to play into the wide channel because that's where you have numbers and whatever, and they're doing that, and then you get a lot more attacks on goal. Great, that's what you want to focus on. But if they're trying to play centrally and you've already said like, no, we don't want you to play centrally, or we want you to receive in this shape if you're going to play centrally, and the player isn't doing it, and then they turn the ball over and it results in shots on goal, or results in the opponents having a shot on goal, then you want to catch that out too and be like, look, this is why we've wanted to do this, because it's a risk for us to do that. And it's a risk that we don't need to take, when if we just do it this way, that's where we're going to have our space. That's where we're going to have success. The other thing that I've done as well, and Jane, I think this kind of ties into your motivation as well. I like to give the players a platform to speak and to discuss things. So whenever I've coached my teams and I've come in at halftime or even pre-match, it's been, all right, what do you guys think? Because what they see on the pitch is really important, and it's different from what we see on the sidelines. And it's also different from what the spectators see if they're in stands as well. So being able to give them that platform and give them a little bit of ownership means that they're going to take a bit more responsibility. And it doesn't mean that you don't have the answer, but it means that maybe they see it a little bit differently. And what we think somebody has a whole lot of time on the ball, it might not feel like that when they're on the pitch. And sometimes they need that information. So you kind of give them nuggets, but also that platform so that they can take ownership and they're responsible for it, rather than telling them this is what you have to do and this is why, because then you take all the responsibility and they don't have as much ownership into it. Hope that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Great questions. Jane, did you think of a second one?
So I really like the why, like, you know, why they're out there. And I can see, because I've coached the boy, like youth men as well. Well, they're men, they're in between, right? So they're in between and they're really hormonal boys. And I can see the difference between, like, and I know the difference between the two because I use different techniques with boys than I use with the females. But the why is really, I guess I can now see that it's, the girls won't ask the why, but you still need to give it to them anyway. So yeah, and the other thing too, I find that works really well with the girls is focusing on what is working before you focus on what isn't working. So just to, and get them to build on what is working, because they forget then, because you sort of go to the what's not working and you go straight there, and they forgot, then they chuck away what they've been doing well, right? And then they just try to, and sometimes it's never going to work in that particular game anyway, because your opposition has just got you nailed in that space. So yeah, any sort of tips for building on that motivational piece and trying to, you know, work on what's positive out of their games, you know, especially to females, because you don't want to, as you said before, let's not reward mediocre performance. Yeah. We actually want to call out what's really working. Yeah. So
yeah. It's actually, you reminded me of something that I had implemented with that other team as well that worked great, because I am very much good at finding what doesn't work well, and I will point that out, and I'm like, we need to fix these things because these are the things that aren't working. And a lot of times, like if a player's doing the same repeated thing over and over poorly, they're going to know about it, because you shouldn't be doing the same repeated thing over and over poorly.
Yeah.
And I started implementing this thing with my team where after each match or weekend of matches, because of the way that we do cups, like you might have 3 or 4 matches in one weekend, they had to send me their own analysis of how they thought they played.
Okay.
So then I got a perspective on what they thought that they did well and what they thought they did poorly. And I also kind of got to see what they thought of my coaching as a result as well. So they'd send me these messages, and I could find like that some of the girls would be really fixated on me calling them out on certain things. I'm like, yeah, you were really bad at that, but don't forget, I also told you that these other things were good. And the reason that you were bad at this one thing was because you were neglecting these other things that you were doing that were so good.
Yeah.
And it changed their perspective when they were going into the next matches, when they were going into training, because instead of them being like, oh, I'm already behind the group, it's like, oh no, I just need to not do that. And this is something that I'm really good at. And this is something I can focus on. Changed everything, like changed our whole dynamic on how we played. So that was a really big one. And then we also set team goals together. So we had one of our cup events was in a preseason event in March. So we were away for the weekend. We were at a team dinner, and I put them together and I said, all right, in 30 minutes, we're going to get together and we're going to talk about team goals with me. We're going to write them down. So have a think about it now. Eat your pizza, whatever. And then when I come back to you, we're going to discuss like what things you guys want to achieve as a team. And we set, I think it was like 6 tangible goals and 5 intangible goals. And they all had their own individual goals as well, but these were the team ones. And I made copies of all of them and printed them out and gave them to each one of the players. And that sees like some of our goals were, I think we were in 5 cup events, and it was to win 3 of them and to place in a total of 4. I think it was to finish in the top 3 in the league. We finished joint top. Have 4 clean sheets and concede less than 10 goals all season. And then to score, like we looked at the goals that we scored the year before, and we upped that by like 5 or 6 goals. So we met all of those tangible goals, and we met most of our intangible goals as well. So giving them that and then reminding them of those goals before matches and before that week's training, or like even when they were giving me their analysis, to be like, but don't forget, we're trying to do this because we want to work towards this goal, helped them tremendously. So that was a really big thing that we did, and it worked great for us. So
yeah, I really like that too, because I do find I need them to focus on their game when they're playing rather than the other team's game. As soon as they focus and start, picking off players and go on the opposition and saying, oh, you've got to watch the striker, or you've got to do this, or you've got to do that, because of that particular piece of their gameplay, they lose it. They start playing the other team's game and they just lose the cohesion totally.
Yeah, that's out of their control. So this just gives them something that they can control. And you can only be expected to control what you can control. You can't control the opposition. So
yeah, that's good. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I had an absolute ball listening to you.
No problem. My pleasure. I am going to jump off though, because I need to eat breakfast before I head off. I'm supposed to be leaving in like 5 minutes, so I do have to.
Yeah, you better go.
Okay. All right. Thanks for organising it too, Dan. See you later.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Been wonderful, and we'll get you on again sometime in the future, probably.
Yeah, perfect. Have a good one. Enjoy your evening, everyone.
You too. See you later.
Have a good day.
Bye.